When your dog stares at you, do you know what they're actually doing? You probably assume they want something. Food, a walk, attention. And sometimes that's true. But behind some of those stares, especially the long soft ones, the ones that happen when there's nothing obvious to want, there's something happening that science has only recently started to understand. And what it reveals about your dog, about you, and about what happens between your two brains when your eyes meet is one of the most extraordinary findings in the entire field of animal cognition. Let's start with the one that will change how you see every future stare. 1. When they stare at you, they're dosing both of you with a bonding chemical. Have you ever held your dog's gaze for a few seconds and felt something shift? A warmth, a settling, something that's hard to name but unmistakably real. You probably assumed it was just love, just the feeling of being close to your animal. What you didn't know is that what you were feeling had a biochemical name, and your dog was feeling it too. In 2015, researcher Miho Nagasawa and her team at Azabu University in Japan published a study in the journal Science that changed how scientists think about dogs and humans. They brought 30 dog owner pairs into a lab and allowed them to interact freely for 30 minutes, measuring oxytocin levels in the urine of both the dog and the owner before and after. The finding was specific and striking. Dogs who spent more time gazing at their owners showed significant increases in oxytocin levels, and those owners' oxytocin levels rose in direct proportion to how long their dog had been gazing at them. The hormone moved in both directions simultaneously, dog to human and human to dog, triggered by nothing more than sustained eye contact between two bonded individuals. Oxytocin is the same hormone released between a mother and her newborn infant during mutual gaze. It drives attachment, trust, and the neurochemical experience of love. And this was the first time it had ever been documented creating a positive loop between two different species. Not approximately the same process, the same process. The researchers administered oxytocin nasally to a subset of the dogs and found that female dogs who received it spent 150% more time gazing at their owners, and those owners then showed a 300% spike in their own oxytocin levels as a result. The gaze created the hormone extended the gaze, which created more hormone, which created more gaze. A loop of mutual bonding chemistry firing between a human and an animal in the same way it fires between a parent and their child. Wolves, the dog's closest genetic relative, did not show this response. Even hand-raised wolves who had lived with humans their whole lives made minimal eye contact and showed no corresponding oxytocin rise. This response appears to have developed specifically in dogs across the tens of thousands of years they spent co-evolving with people. Your dog staring at you isn't just affection. It's an evolutionary adaptation that literally produces the chemistry of love in both of you. And that by the end of this video, you'll understand how to use this knowledge to deepen the bond between you in a way that takes less than 2 minutes and costs nothing. 2. They're reading your face and storing what they find. Here's the part that should permanently change how you move through your home with your dog present. Your dog is watching your face, not occasionally, continuously. And what they're doing with what they see is far more sophisticated than most owners have ever considered. Research published in Current Biology in 2015 by Muller and colleagues confirmed that dogs can discriminate between happy and angry human faces, not just through general mood detection, but through specific visual processing of facial features. Dogs were shown the upper or lower halves of human faces expressing different emotions and consistently distinguished between positive and negative expressions, even from unfamiliar faces and even from partial information. They were processing emotional content from faces, the way a socially intelligent creature processes social information, not just reacting to tone or context, reading faces. Albuquerque and colleagues further found that dogs respond to the emotional content of what they see. When shown angry human faces, dogs produced mouth-licking behaviors, a known appeasement signal in canine communication, suggesting they were responding to perceived negative emotion with a social de-escalation gesture directed at a person. They weren't just detecting emotion, they were communicating back in response to it. And research from the Max Planck Institute of Geoanthropology, published in Animal Cognition in 2024, tested 77 dog owner pairs using genuine human emotions not simulated or recorded, but real emotional states induced through video clips, and found that dogs behaved measurably differently based on whether their owner was happy, sad, or neutral. Dogs gazed less at sad owners. They jumped less. They were less compliant with commands when their owner was sad, By contrast, they performed better at new tasks when their owner was happy. They weren't just detecting your mood, they were adjusting their behavior in response to it in real time. Every time your dog stares at you, some portion of that gaze is reading your face, gathering data, updating their model of your emotional state, deciding how to orient themselves in relation to you. You are the most important source of social information in your dog's world, and their eyes rarely leave you for long. 3. They're watching to predict what happens next. Have you ever had your dog stare at you for no apparent reason, and then 20 minutes later the thing they seemed to be anticipating happened? You got up and walked to the kitchen and they were already there. You reached for your shoes and they were already at the door. You moved slightly in your chair and they were up and ready before you'd completed the thought of standing. That's not intuition. That's pattern recognition so precise it looks like mind reading. Research on canine perspective taking and gaze behavior, reviewed in Animal Cognition in 2023 by Julian Kaminsky and colleagues, has established that dogs are not only sensitive to the gaze of others, but actively use it to anticipate future actions. Dogs track where humans are looking, what humans are attending to, and use this information to make predictions about what will happen next. This predictive capacity running in the background of every moment your dog spends watching you is part of why they seem to know things before they happen. They're running a continuous predictive model against your behavior, updated in real time by everything they observe. And here's what makes this remarkable. This predictive attention is specifically tuned to you. Research from the Budapest Family Dog Project has established across decades of study that dogs orient toward human gaze and human attention in ways that no other domesticated animal does consistently. They don't just track moving things, they track where people are looking. And they follow gaze in a way that goes beyond simple conditioning. They appear to understand, at some level, that looking at something means being interested in something. That another creature's gaze is information about the world, not just a stimulus to follow. When your dog stares at you from across the room, they're not bored. They're modeling your next move, updating their predictions, staying ready. You are the center of their observational universe, and every stare is a data collection session about the person who controls the most important variables in their world. 4. They're asking you something you don't know how to hear. Have you ever noticed that your dog stares at you differently in different situations? There's the stare at mealtime focused, almost rigid, with their body oriented toward the kitchen. There's the stare during play bright, with their weight shifting forward and their tail going. And then there's a different kind of stare, softer, held longer, happening when nothing is obviously wanted, when everything seems fine, when they just look at you. That last one is the one most owners walk past without understanding what it means. And it is, counterintuitively, the most important one. Research on dog-to-human communication has established that dogs use gaze as an intentional communicative signal in ways that go beyond simple attention seeking. A 2003 study by Miclosi and colleagues, published in the Journal of Comparative Psychology, found that dogs were significantly more likely to gaze at their owner when faced with an unsolvable problem compared to wolves, and that this gaze-to-human behavior was specifically communicative, functioning to solicit help or information. Dogs had learned, over thousands of years of coevolution with humans, that looking at a person can change what that person does. Their gaze is not just perception, it's communication, an attempt to bridge the gap between what they know and what you know. The soft, lingering stare your dog gives you when nothing obvious is happening? That is your dog maintaining contact with you in the only language available to them. It's the equivalent of sitting quietly with someone you trust and making eye contact across the room, not asking for anything, not signaling distress, just here, present, connected to you in the way that costs them nothing and gives them everything. And hey, if this is changing how you see those moments, hit like and subscribe. We want more people to understand what their dogs have been trying to tell them all along. 5. Some stares are something else entirely, and you need to know the difference. Here's the part that matters as much as everything else on this list. Not every stare is the warm, bonded, oxytocin-releasing gaze we've been describing, and knowing the difference is important for your relationship, and in some situations for your safety. A hard stare fixed, unblinking, with a still body, raised posture, rigid tail, and closed mouth is not a loving gaze. In canine body language, that combination of signals is a threat display. A dog who is staring without blinking, whose body is tense rather than soft, whose weight is forward rather than relaxed, is a dog who is communicating something urgent. That is a stare that should be respected with slow, calm movement away from whatever is triggering it. Not met with direct eye contact, not leaned into, not ignored. The distinction is almost entirely in the body around the eyes. A loving gaze has soft eyes, slightly squinting, relaxed muscles around the socket, possibly paired with slow blinking. The body is loose. The tail is low or moving in wide sweeps rather than held high and stiff. The overall effect is one of ease, not tension. Once you know what to look for in the body, you will rarely confuse the two again. Research from Arizona State University, published in Anthrozoos in 2025, found that humans are often poor at accurately reading dog emotions because they focus on context rather than on the dog's actual physical signals. Most of the time this doesn't matter because most stares from bonded family dogs are benign. But the skill of reading the body around the stare is worth developing because the dogs who are most likely to be misread are the ones under stress, whose signals are being missed precisely when those signals matter most. 6. Your stare back matters more than you think. So what do you do with all of this? What does it mean for the way you interact with your dog today, tomorrow, every day? It means that one of the most powerful things you can do for your dog takes about 2 minutes and requires no equipment, no training, and no particular skill. It requires only that you stop, look at your dog, and let them look back. Not staring aggressively, not holding their gaze so intensely that it reads as confrontational. A soft, warm, deliberate gaze, the kind you'd give to someone you love, who is sitting across from you. Relaxed brow, soft eyes, no agenda. And then let whatever your dog does happen. The Nagasawa 2015 study from Science demonstrated that this mutual gaze is what triggers the oxytocin loop in both of you. It's not unidirectional. It's not something your dog does to you or something you do to your dog. It's something that happens between you when you are both present to the moment in the same way. When you stare back with the same quality of attention your dog is offering you, think about how rarely that actually happens. Your dog looks at you dozens of times each day, and most of the time you're looking at your phone, at the television, at whatever task you're in the middle of. The gaze comes and goes unmet. The loop never closes. The chemistry that was ready to fire sits waiting for a signal that doesn't arrive. Now imagine what happens when you put the phone down and look back, deliberately, for 2 uninterrupted minutes. Your dog's eyes find yours. The oxytocin starts moving in both directions. Their body softens. Yours does too, though you might not notice. 2 nervous systems doing the ancient thing. They evolved together across 15,000 years to do, holding each other in their gaze and releasing the chemistry of belonging into the space between them. That's not sentiment. That's not anthropomorphism. That's the most rigorously documented finding in the science of the human-dog bond. And it's available to you right now, every time your dog stops and looks at you across the room. All it requires is that you look back